Should you bump up Jayden Daniels in your fantasy football rankings, or is he headed for a sophomore slump? We give you that answer as we break it all down for the Washington Commanders 2025 Fantasy Football Outlook on this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm running about NFL fantasy and betting for SportingNews.com. My co-host, Michelle Majuk of NFL.com, is under the weather, so I'm covering her on the Commanders show today. On today's show, we'll break down the three biggest offseason narratives as we go into fantasy football drafts in a few months here that we look at the Commanders. And the Commanders had a big year breaking out with Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury's offense. He ends up as a top QB right away as a rookie second overall pick in the 2024 draft. And then we had Terry McLaurin do the damage as well with him. So we'll look at if Jayden Daniels is positioned to build on that production from last season. Then we'll look at his new weapon, Deebo Samuel, what that move means for Deebo and for Terry McLaurin, who had his biggest fantasy year yet last season in his first year with Daniels. Then we'll look at the backfield. Is there a value there between Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Ekeler that you want to explore late in drafts at running back? So that's on the docket for today's show. So excited to break all that down for you as we go through all the teams in the NFC East. That means we'll close with the New York Giants on Friday's show. So we've hit the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles. If you missed those shows, check them out. We've also done previous divisions there, so all over the board with the AFC South, also in the NFC South. So check out those previous shows. And we will now move forward with the Commanders. And really, Jayden Daniels was outstanding. I banged the table for him. I thought he for sure would be a QB 10 in the top 10 somewhere. We were drafting him around 10 to 15 last year. He ended up as a QB 5 all around. That means in total scoring, average scoring, he was the QB 5. The only people ahead of him were Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, the MVP. So those were the two MVP front runners with all the numbers they put up. Then you had two pocket passers have pretty prolific seasons in Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield. And Daniels actually finished ahead of Jalen Hurts, who was the QB 6 on the board. Now we look at him, his cost has gone way up, right? We knew this was going to happen. After you finish QB 5, there's a lot of more buzz about you after you had a breakout rookie season going into year 2. Now the industry is all over Jayden Daniels. He's at QB 3. It's going to be very expensive to go get him. As you can imagine, the two quarterbacks that are ahead of him, in whatever order you like them in, are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who finished ahead of him. And now you have Daniels jumping the pocket passers because he has that built-in cheat code of the running that adds to his total here in Washington. Everyone also sees the Commanders' offense as being improved and steady here with Cliff Kingsbury staying as their offense coordinator. So all that is in play here. Now, really, what can you expect in year 2 of Daniels? Now, I will say this right off the bat. There's no chance for a sophomore slump here. It just doesn't look in that environment to be the case. There's not anything that would suggest that, right? Everything has been positive. They went out and actually got a left tackle in Laremy Tunsil. They got another veteran receiver, Deebo Samuel. Look, they didn't lose all that much either. Diami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus are the only people out the door, and those were just kind of backup players. They still have Zach Ertz in a key role. They brought him back. The young tight end, we'll see if they can get him more involved in Ben Sennett. So there's just a lot of key weapons here that have been intact, and you'd figure with Deebo back here in this environment, traded from the 49ers, he's going to have some value. So there's that. There's a better protection. There's a better understanding and experience in the offense. And just overall, Jayden Daniels is feeling it, right? Once you have that rookie season under your belt and can produce at that level, you're going to be red hot and keep it going. So really looking great for Jayden Daniels. The question is, can he finish? This is a question you do have to ask when you take a quarterback at 3rd overall in his position. Can he finish as the top scorer at his position? Absolutely he can, because Josh Allen, if he doesn't get as many rushing touchdowns, so that could open the door, right? Lamar Jackson might not get as many passing touchdowns. I think Jayden Daniels is just scratching the surface of his immense talent as a dual threat. He's got the cheat code. He's got the weaponry to spread the ball around in the passing game, really to do some damage this season for the Commanders. So that's what you have to look at. Am I going to get any type of value if I take this quarterback third? And you could, right? If he finishes above Allen Jackson, that's what you're going to get. But really, you have to hope that he goes up, up, up. Now, I'll say this. He has a pretty high floor. So if you're worried about a sophomore slump, I wouldn't worry too much. I think it could be lowest around QB7. That's not terrible, right? I still think that you look at Jayden Daniels, he could score more than last year and to finish lower than the scoring in the overall rankings at the position, but that would still mean he's a better quarterback to have in relation to other positions here and make sure you jump on this first tier. And that's the thing you look at with Jayden Daniels. He represents the first tier. He's right there with Jackson and Allen and Jackson, however order you want it. So when we look at the tiers and we do tier-based drafting, going to Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield, that would say that is the entry point for a value there. Daniels is the better value right now than Allen and Jackson because if they finish near the same and Daniels has the potential to outscore Allen Jackson in his second season, then you can definitely justify him going as a third QB on the board. Now, it's very expensive. You got to kind of plot your team and be ready to take him as early. In some leagues, has the second round in a 12-team leagues. Yeah, he's definitely going to go in the top 24 because he's got a lot of buzz. Everyone's into him. He's not going to last definitely past the third round in most leagues. So Jayden Daniels, just prepare that, again, there's no indication that he's going to slump. His head is screwed tightly on here. He's just a plus town all around. He's worked hard at it. He's got better weapons. He's got better protection. They totally trust him in this offense. He has autonomy to pass downfield and run and kind of take control of what they want to do here with Kingsbury. So, look, you think, okay, at QB3, you cannot get anything just totally off and get your return on investment. But I think you will actually get it and maybe then some here. But Daniels, that's how talented this quarterback is. He's been prolific in putting up numbers. He was the Rookie of the Year. Before that, he was the Heisman Trophy guy. If you put the right system with Jayden Daniels, which we've seen now in his final season at LSU, and then with Kingsbury in Washington, you're going to get big things from him. And I think he's maybe just scratching the surface. So I'm really excited to see what he does. But forget it, slump. I would say more bump than slump for Daniels is the conclusion. Again, the people that are going to have a big say in that are his receivers. Terry McLaurin remains his number one, but Deebo Samuel now also in the mix for the Commanders. So that's what we want to look at. Is Terry McLaurin kind of spiked and where he's at and can't go much higher? And is Deebo ready for a rebound? We'll take a look at that after our first break. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs, we're down to one series before the finals. The Thunder, congratulations to them. They've taken care of the Timberwolves. They advanced 4-1 to the NBA Finals for the second time in that specific franchise's history. Now the Knicks are trying to continue the comeback here. There was a tough loss the other night here against the Pacers. So back home at Madison Square Garden, they're 4-point favorites. Will they come through and make it a series, push it back to Indiana one more time, or is it time for the Pacers to join the Thunder? You can check it out every night with FanDuel Sportsbook. It's going to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, can't miss moments that you need to track, and you can get in on the action with the game-winning shots, breakout players. There's never been a better time to get on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and with live bets. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, there's a lot of those good ones that you can look at. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So check it out. You want to see who's going to show up in the biggest moments. You can put together a parlay there, the same game of looking at the scoring and a bunch of guys together or the game outcome. So a lot of ways to do it. That's how it would look like if you combine live prop bets mid-game as well and just see how the action unfolds. And you can do that on the fly as well as before the game. And a 200 bonus in bets to add to the excitement with your first $5 bet. That's excellent. So just do it right now. Go to FanDuel. New time. It's a great time. It's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you would get $200 in bonus bets. That is a fantastic offer. And we're running out of time with the NBA playoffs. So get in here as we transition from the Eastern Conference Finals to the NBA Finals. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, it is time to continue the show. So we do have Jayden Daniels. We're giving the stamp of approval that he's going to be worth that third pick at quarterback and be one of the safest picks on the board. Now, Terry McLaurin, look at his numbers last season. I liked him, and I had him in a season-long stack with Daniels, and I thought he was going to be a big factor, and he was. He had a great season, finally with a elite quarterback. He was the wide receiver 13 in average scoring, so right on the cusp, borderline wide receiver 1-2, but he was a wide receiver 5 in total, so he gave you a lot of games. He was healthy, durable, and was a plug-and-play, set-it-and-forget-it type guy as a wide receiver 2 all season long for you. And again, it was really nice to see the chemistry kind of go into effect right away here with Jayden Daniels. Now you look at it, he's ranked wide receiver 16. So Scary Terry not maybe getting the respect he deserves. Now, interesting, the guys that are ahead of him are T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, and Mike Evans. So you have two big play outside guys there, as well as a number 2 behind Jamar Chase. And then behind him are Garrett Wilson, the clear Jets number 1, Devontae Adams, kind of the number 1 there with Puka Nacua in Los Angeles Rams. And then you have Rashee Rice behind Terry McLaurin. So look, I look at Terry as being a very good value. He's in an offense, you know what's going to get it done. Wilson has some volatility because of being in a Justin Fields offense. Adams is still behind Nacua. You have Higgins behind Chase, just as you have Rice maybe being equal to Xavier Worthy. So I think you could see Tyreek and Evans having the value, but Tyreek is getting a little older, so is Evans. So, and Terry McLaurin, by the way, is looking to cash in and try to really get a new contract that lives up to where he is now as a player for this team and how critical he is to Jayden Daniels in this entire passing game. So that's interesting. I think he's still a very good value at wide receiver 16. I get it. He's not going to dominate targets the way he did last season with Deebo Samuel in the mix. But keep in mind, this Commanders team only has 117 targets vacated. 104 of those at wide receiver come from Olamide Zaccheaus and Diami Brown. Brown is with the Jaguars. Zaccheaus is with the Bears. So they had 104 targets last year. They had 75 catches, 814 combined yards, and 4 touchdowns. So Terry McLaurin was having the nice year, and he broke out all the way, while they had to be a little bit committee approach with their other receivers, inside or outside. So this is really good news for Deebo Samuel, because if you add up the 75 catches, 814 yards, and 4 touchdowns, that gives him almost wide receiver 3 value. That's kind of interesting because he's right outside of that range right now at wide receiver 41 on the board. So big disparity, but I don't understand how necessarily if McLaurin is down, Deebo should see a big jump. I think McLaurin is more leveling out near the wide receiver 12 to 14 range, and I wouldn't drop him too much. But Deebo definitely is undervalued here at RB or wide receiver 41. I also think you have to look at him as an RB that's going to get some targets there in the passing game out of the backfield, as well as just get some carries to give them a little bit of wrinkle here in Kingsbury's offense. So there's the production to be had. That doesn't mean Samuel's just going to eat up all the production of Zaccheaus and Brown there, because they didn't bring back Noah Brown on this team. They do have Ertz, so they spread the ball around a lot for Kingsbury. So again, when you look at the number 2 receiver, Deebo's going to be in the mix for sure. Now, he's a good bet to get the second most targets on the team, maybe competing with Ertz a little bit for that, and that helps a lot, right, with Samuel's value. But definitely it's not bad. I just think Terry McLaurin is right there, maybe a few notches underrated. But I think with Deebo, I mean, if I was going to take him, I'd wait a little bit. He is an older guy with injuries. I would take him more than RB41. I'm not going to try to get him like in the RB 30 or wide receiver 30 range here, right? We don't want that for sure, because then you're giving up the value with him. I think you want to see how much you can stretch out and get that value. But again, McLaurin is going to be an easy, steady return on investment where you're still taking a big risk with Deebo Samuel as a wide receiver / running back in this offense. How many touches is he going to get? He's getting older. He's also a durability risk. So all that is there. But in wide receiver 41, you're just trying to help him become a wide receiver 30 to 36, right? But I wouldn't want to take him in that role. I want to enjoy him as the value so you get a good return on the investment and you save a little bit there. Where I think you're also going to save a little bit on McLaurin, and he's going to be the clear go-to guy here. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a big chunk cut into the targets there. I mean, we gave you a path to where Samuel can get those targets without cutting into McLaurin's all that much. So I do think that's where you'll see it. And you have to keep in mind, it's not stealing from this, it's stealing or replacing the targets that were at wide receiver for a team last season when they make this move. And Samuel certainly can do that. And it's definitely a cleanup upgrade over having Zacchaeus and Diami Brown in key situations there for Daniels. So I like it. So again, wide receiver 16 for McLaurin seems a little low. Deebo maybe just low as well, but it might turn out being exactly right at 41, where I think Terry's still being undervalued at 16. That's where I would really want to target here, especially if I can create a season-long stack with Daniels and McLaurin. That's where I want to go. If you can't get that, then you take a flyer later with Samuel. Again, I'd say wide receiver 36. If you can wait that long and just take your guy after that, that's ideal to really get the best return on where you're taking Samuel. And Samuel already know has durability issues, so that's going to be something that overall is going to be concerning with him and his value. Now, we will get into the backfield, and there's two key cogs there by Robinson Jr., Austin Ekeler. Not much change there behind him this offseason. So this running game was not all that consistent effective. They were kind of by committee. So it was really hard to get anything out of those guys. So we will see if there's something that you can extract here in later rounds with this backfield. And we'll do that right here before we end the show. All right, let's look at these running backs for the Commanders. Brian Robinson Jr., last year, RB24 on average. That means he was the last RB2 off the board in 12-team leagues in half-point PPR. You had Austin Ekeler, RB34 on average, and he missed some time in the middle. So I don't think this was unexpected. This is about what you would think. But this year, there's less even inspiration over either of these guys. Brian Robinson Jr. is down to RB30 in half-point PPR in the rankings. Ekeler is an absolute afterthought at RB46. So there's not a lot to think here. There's Chris Rodriguez Jr., there's Jeremy McNichols. It could be just an all-out situational committee with all these four guys. So I'm going to say the answer is nothing here that we want to look at. Like Austin Ekeler, you can think about, okay, he's going to get involved in the pass game, but keep in mind you have Daniels, a running quarterback. He's not going to check down as much. He's going to use his legs as the check down. So that's something you have to consider here in the value of what Austin Ekeler can do in relation to another quarterback versus what he has now. And Daniels, and then Brian Robinson Jr. is a pounder. He can finish well in the red zone. He's a touchdown-dependent guy a lot. He can be explosive at times, but again, I don't think they trust either to see all the full touches here. I think Ekeler, if you saw his role, it was rather steady as receiving back, but again, I don't know if they're going to force feed Ekeler that we've seen in the past. He's older. He's slowing down a little bit. He's not with the Chargers where he was the centerpiece of that offense. He's just another wheel in the cog here that we're just putting in to the mix. And I think with that, I think you look at Robinson and Ekeler, I think it's a pretty good situational split backfield, and you'll see some of Rodriguez and McNichols at times here to help out, but they're not going to mess with it. I don't think it's a prolific running game that we're going to see, regardless with Tunsil in there, left tackle, and some other improvements they've tried to make here in Washington. So overall, I'm just going to say, look, Brian Robinson Jr., can he finish higher than the RB30th where he's ranked? Sure he can, because he was RB24 last year. He was definitely viable as an RB2. Then Ekeler, however, RB34 last year, he's dropped all the way to RB46 this year. So you have Deebo Samuel. I think if one guy's going to hurt one of these guys, I think it's Deebo cutting into Austin Ekeler. They just are going to do that, use him in the passing game, because that's a big part of what Ekeler does. They can also give Samuel the ball in the red zone to spell what they have in Robinson. So that really cuts into Robinson a lot more than we were looking at Ekeler. So if I had to decide between the two, just because he's a lower cost, I think I go Austin Ekeler and hope for the best, and hopefully you can get some cheap PPR points, get like 6 to 10 key touches per game, including a good bit of work in the passing game. Then you're really looking good with Ekeler. But I just don't think you can get that path with Robinson unless he scores quite a bit, and his scoring might be capped at like 8 touchdowns because they have so many weapons that they can use in the red zone and in deep here. So it's a very intriguing situation where the Commanders all of a sudden have a little bit of embarrassment of riches in terms of their skill position players. They can be more selective, pickier. And I think Deebo, is going to have a lot more effect cutting into these two guys and what they're going to do than what McLaurin is doing already. Because again, different roles, different needs here for this team, and I think that's what you have to consider. And thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL Draft is over. We know well in the rearview mirror, more than a month ago way. But the roster moves and news never stop. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Now, a few more minutes, we'll look at the Commanders here. Again, it's a pretty good offense overall. It's just hard to have too many pieces from it. I mean, Daniels, sure. McLaurin, yes. And then the rest is a bit of just like sleeper and trying to find value here. So, again, Samuel, I'm going to take as a wide receiver 3, but I don't want to pay that cost. I don't want to pay above a wide receiver 35, really, to get him in most leagues. So that's my conclusion on Samuel. McLaurin, I'm totally fine with him being in the elite tier wide receiver 2. I think he has a case to go a little bit higher, but I also think there's a chance he can come down a little bit from his season with Daniels and finish a little lower. So I do think, however, he still has a very high ceiling as the clear go-to guy in the Commanders offense. And finally, Daniels, again, his makeup mentally, physically, emotionally, all that you want to think about. He's not a guy that's going to dwell on losing the NFC Championship game, really just kind of bum out. We saw Brock Purdy, look, it dropped a little bit, but part of that was his own injury issues with him and around him last year. But in the end, he was more effective when needed with throwing downfield when things were in line. So, again, let's not just look at the situation and say it's one and done here for Daniels. I think he has a very prosperous reality and fantasy career ahead of him. There are good vibes in Washington. I think the schedule being tougher will also help because that will keep Daniels on the field, chucking, moving the ball, running around, making plays for this team. So really excited to see what you get from the Washington Commanders. Now, when we look at this, I mean, is there a third target you might trust? I think that guy is Ekeler. So that gives him a little bit more value again as RB 46 versus Robinson, more of a straight-up runner, and they really haven't tried to expand his role in the passing game. And with that, they were prompted to go get Ekeler off the Chargers release heap last year. So definitely a lot of things we look at with this team to just say, hey, the Commanders are well-positioned here and are going to put up a lot of points. I think they're going to be more dangerous all around than last year. So, again, someone's going to have value in this backfield. It's not going to be very consistent. It's going to be matchup-based. It's going to be when you need a flex that you can look at between Robinson and Ekeler, but that's about it here. But Deebo could be a very useful wide receiver 3. You have Terry McLaurin, definitely has the wide receiver 1 upside. Daniels, of course, has QB 1 overall upside for this team. Now, keeping Kingsbury was a big coup. I think it was an underrated storyline to have him here calling the plays and just making sure that they're getting the ball in the hands of their key playmakers here to help Daniels. I think Daniels will play a lot more confident. It's not like he wasn't confident as a rookie for sure. He looked very poised and in control there, playing beyond his years, a little bit even ahead of Caleb Williams, who should be the guy you target this year instead in that 10 to 13 range for that great return on investment that you're really going to be pleased with. So I'm just very excited to see how this all plays out with the Commanders. I think they'll have a dynamic offense. There'll be plenty of big play opportunities there with now Tunsil blocking the side. That's critical here to Daniels on the left side, and then you want to also take more shots and be more vertical with this offense a little bit more. That's something that we saw elements of last year, but I think they'll have more confidence to do so this year. Daniels, again, I think he runs easily for 850-plus yards. It's a big part of what they do offensively, spread the field. If there's not something that is there, they either just power run against a weaker front with what they have up front, and then you just say, hey, we're going to then throw downfield. So they do have experienced and upgraded blocking here. So, again, I think you'll see more of Daniels playing off these guys, Robinson, Ekeler, than them being more factors overall, because again, Daniels is going to cut into their checkdowns and their rushing work and their rushing production this season. So you have to consider all that. So I think if the bumps are going to be there, they're all going to be all about the passing game here. So that gives Ekeler a glimmer of hope, but definitely you can fade and continue to fade Robinson a little more than that. So there you have it. There's a look at the Washington Commanders, their fantasy football outlook for 2025. Up next, we'll talk about the New York Giants. They have a quarterback situation flux for Malik Neighbors. We'll see what they do in the backfield with Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Cam Scatterboot. So a lot of things to answer there. Again, if you missed any of it there on the previous shows, go like, subscribe, catch up. We're all on the archives, whether you're watching on YouTube or checking out wherever you get your podcasts. We've got you covered this offseason. We go through all 32 teams, the top fantasy football narratives that you need to know. And if you want to stay locked into us on the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast, you can definitely subscribe. Be great on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So we are there for you in the inbox all the time, all throughout the offseason. You got to be fed here. We're still counting down the days, 98 days before the NFL season starts. So we've got plenty of content for you to digest here, and it's all available here on the Locked On Network. Again, through YouTube or, again, traditional podcast methods, we're all around for you. And don't worry, Michelle will be feeling better soon and getting back with us to break down the Giants. So we're excited for that because she's always great and has a lot of insights here that I couldn't possibly do without. So she's great. So check out her stuff as well at NFL.com, as well as mine on sportingnews.com for Locked On Fantasy Football. This has been Vinnie Iyer. We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.